Hey class, welcome back. We are going to be finishing up vowels this week. Today we're going to be talking about the vowels that are called the central vowels. And I think this is probably a little bit more difficult than the front and back vowels because there's very subtle differences between these vowels. So let's dive into it. Okay, so at this point, this is going to be very familiar to you because we've been talking about this now. The different parameters that we use to describe vowels. So whether the tongue is high, mid, or low in the mouth, whether the tongue is advanced in the front, central, or back of the mouth, um, whether these vowels are made tense or lax, and whether the lips are rounded or unrounded. So we're going to continue to use these parameters to describe the central vowels. Okay, this should also be familiar. And I highly encourage you to keep practicing memorizing this. We're going to talk about this tonight in class. So um, last week we covered the front and back vowels. So today we're going to be covering these vowels that are known as essential vowels. And you could see they are centrally located in the vowel quadrilateral. So the vowels that look like upside down E's, this is called the schwa. And the one next to it is called the schwar. The R on the end is to represent that it is rhoticized, which means it is what we call R colored. Um, this is a vowel where you'll hear in words like father, mother. Um, so often the ending on words that sounds like father or so. We'll talk a little bit more how we produce this. Schwa is a little bit more complicated. So schwa often sounds like but a very short, unstressed versus this vowel down here, which is in a stressed syllable, that sound. Um, Sometimes the schwa will sound like other phonemes. Really, what the schwa is, and the way to think of it is um, the unstressed syllable. So often in connected speech, when we're talking, the schwa is what often gets left out. So I'll give you some examples when we talk about the schwa. This vowel up here is the stressed form of this vowel. So when we say a word like father, uh, the stress is not on that ER sound. But if we say a word like bird, there's only one vowel that's stressed in that word, right? Because it's a one syllable word. And that is this symbol here. Okay. All right. So let's talk about these individually. Okay. So as I said, these two make the sound, stressed versus unstressed. So if the word was, let's say, but, it would be this one syllable, stressed. If the word was about, uh, the initial in that is not stressed, right? We don't say about, we say about. So that would be the schwa. Um, Again, a word like bird, where it's one syllable, that's going to be this symbol. A word like brother, that at the end is going to be the unstressed because we don't say brother, we say brother, right? Um, because these are essential vowels, that indicates that the tongue is in the center of the mouth. There is stress differences between these vowels, so we're always going to use in a stress syllable the one that looks like a carrot and the one that looks like a backwards three with the little swoop on it. In the unstressed, we're always going to use the ones that look like schwa. So the upside down E and the upside down E with this little swoop on it. In Spanish, there are no central vowels. So if you're a Spanish speaker, this will not be familiar to you. Okay, So let's talk about this vowel. Um, and this is an example of a word with this vowel, heard. So again, a lot of these single syllable words where there's only one vowel pattern, you're going to use this vowel. So it's mid-central. We're talking about height as mid and central as an advancement of the tongue, and it's a rounded vowel. And this can get a little tricky in therapy because often kids will substitute the w sound for the all versions of and it's a common error pattern. So lots of times we'll tell kids to retract their lips so they don't round it to w, but this particular sound is made with rounded lips. So just keep that in mind. I already said that it's different words that all mean the same thing. R colored or rhoticized indicates that it has that R sound when we produce it. Um, your jaw is in a mid-open position, so um, and as I was just talking about, sometimes certain speakers will not round their lips to make this. And often we see this with kids who've been in speech therapy where they've been told to retract their lips to avoid that rounding into the w sound. Um, the velopharynx is closed, and you'll kind of this become familiar as we go through it, that similar to the other vowels that are in this family. Okay. All right. So I already gave you the example of bird in this first list. So what I'd like you to do is go through each one of these rows and try and figure out yourself if you can find this vowel, and then I'll post the answer key in Canvas. Okay, so we just talked about the sound like in father, the sound in bird, but now we're going to talk about the sound as in words like mother or father, farther. Um, so this is the unstressed version. This is also mid-central, but this is lax, okay? So it's unstressed and it's called schwa. So it's the component to the schwa, which we're going to talk about next, that's R-colored. Um, the jaw is in a mid, sometimes closed position. So if you make the sound yourself, father. Um, you could see your lips are rounded, but not real, super rounded. So father. So they're rounded, but they're lax. There's no tenseness like there would be in other sounds that have rounding in a very tense rounding position. Again, with these sounds, your velopharynx is going to be closed. All right. So um, again, what I'd like you to do is go through these words and see if you can identify which ones have the schwa. Um, The second row, we've kind of already gone through some of these, such as mother, father, brother, sister. And I do want to add here that this is definitely something that if you have a different dialect, um, you may not produce this sound at the end of words. So I'm just going to tell you a little story. Um, as you know by now, I've mentioned that I'm from the East Coast. My twin daughters go to school in the Boston area. And the Boston area is famous for not producing this sound at the end of words. Also, certain areas of New York also do not produce this. So when we moved to San Diego, we went to a church service, and the deacon was saying a prayer, and he said, "The Mother, the Father, and the Holy Son." And my daughter looked at me and she said, "Oh, these are people. Did you hear how he said that?" So you will often hear people from the East Coast, instead of saying a crisp brother, sister, they'll say brother, sister, father. So just keep that in mind. When you're trying, if you were trying to transcribe a child, for example, who's from uh, a different part of the country. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the stressed sound. So kind of the stressed counterpart to the schwa. So this is not R colored. So this example here for the word mother, you have the schwa at the end, but the sound in the first syllable is the stressed sound. So I gave you the example of the word but. As you could see, all these examples on the bottom of this slide are single syllable words where there's only one vowel pattern, and that vowel is therefore the stressed vowel. And it's this version that looks like a carrot. So this is, rather than being mid central, this is low, mid, back. Okay. So, and you could feel it. It is low, and it's your tongue is back, right? So low, mid, back, central. A lot of descriptors here, and it's lax. So you could make this without much movement, right? So ba. Um, your your tongue is almost close to where you would make, as you could see here, your body's positioned towards the aw sound. Um, but this is really a lax vowel. And this is often, these central vowels are what kids will often produce if they have, for example, a motor speech disorder. They will centralize all the vowels, sometimes more severe speech sound disorders. Um, Vowels, if children are not producing vowels by the time they are between 2 and 3 years old, it's a major cause for concern because we learn vowels very early in development. So I've worked with kids who did not learn the corner vowels first. And most kids will learn those distinctive, as we talked about last week, those distinctive corner vowels first. So as you can imagine, if a child is producing all their words or syllables with just they're going to be highly unintelligible. So it's important to start having them move from that lax central position to other vowels in the quadrilateral. Okay, so another distinction here with this vowel is that your lips are unrounded. So you could see, you again, are not moving your articulators too much to produce this vowel. That's why for kids who have, for example, motor speech disorders, they don't have to do too much to produce this sound. Okay. So again, take some time to go through each one of these rows and identify which ones have this stressed phoneme in them, and then check your answers against the answer key that will be posted. Okay, so the schwa. So the schwa is very commonly used, especially as I mentioned, when you're talking in connected speech, you often will leave sounds out, especially if you're talking quickly. So often words, you'll see if you're someone you're transcribing like connected speech instead of just one word utterances, if you're transcribing a whole phrase or sentence that someone makes, the schwa will show up because we don't enunciate each individual word like this when we're talking, right? Otherwise, we'd sound very robotic. And that would be some type of a disorder if you talk like that, and someone would be working with you in speech therapy. So we naturally will shorten some words. So the schwa is mid-central and it's lax. And it's lax. It's about as unstressed as you can get. Okay. It's unrounded. So this again is a sound that does not require much effort with your articulators to make. The tongue is mid-central position. Now, again, this could change depending on the context that you're producing the schwa in. Your jaw is in a mid-open position. Your lips are definitely not rounded for this sound. And as we talked about with the other vowels in this central position, your velar pharynx is closed. So again, think of the schwa as unstressed. This is never going to appear as the stressed vowel in a word. So the example that we talked about already was the word about. We don't say about. So that's why it is transcribed with the schwa versus the symbol that looks like a carrot. We call it carrot. Okay, so you can take some time to look at these words and see if you can identify the schwa in them. Again, don't pay attention to the spelling when you're trying to identify the schwa, because then you can really get messed up. So it's best to think of it as the unstressed vowel in words versus necessarily looking for what would translate to what letter goes with the sound, because that's going to trip you up because it's not going to be a one-to-one correspondence. Okay. All right. So again, start memorizing. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Start memorizing the vowel quadrilateral and where these vowels sit. As you can see here, schwa, schwar, and the stressed component for schwar are all central. Um, the stress component for the sound so technically the stress portion of schwa is going to be lower than these other central vowels. Okay, so these are really smack dab in the middle. So the tongue is centrally located as far as advancement, but also the tongue is in the mid position as far as height, where it drops a little bit lower for this sound. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. So what I want to do next is move on to the diphthong lesson, and then we'll be complete with vowels. And next week, we're going to be moving on to consonants.